is to know, from masterpieces to deep fried tacos. And if the movie sucks, you might hear them say, there's no telling where the guys will take you. Get ready for a spoiler. Won't say it twice, cause we already warned you. Better watch out, it's gonna ruin the plot. Real spoilers. Real spoilers. Real spoilers.
Broadcasting from the lush but not lavish studios located in the basement of the O'Keefe Institute for Advanced Film Snarkitude, this is Real Spoilers, episode 722, Glass, Knives, Onions Out.
Oh, yeah. That's...
Something like that.
A knife cutting a glass onion?
Yeah. Get them onions out, ladies.
That's right.
Which is a
Maybe
perfect
not for this
segue to our sponsor, Kimikoto Knives.
Wait, we have a sponscer?
No,
Oh,
that
man.
was
No,
April Fool's. This is actually an early April Fool's joke.
Very early or very late.
A sponsor.
I know. It's like, when did that happen?
Sponsor this.
Looks like we've made it.
Maybe after 10 years we can go around.
Yeah,
and
right.
Show
It
them
looks
our,
like a 700 plus episodes.
our award. Look at this. There's our 10-year of podcasting award.
We're up to almost one download per episode.
We finally got that Blue Chew ad.
Yes. So I guess let's go on the, for some of us, virtual table, and everyone can introduce themselves.
This is Joe.
This is Kevin.
And this is Tom. So we recorded later than usual this week because Christmas was on a Sunday, which is our recording day of choice. So
I think we all would have gotten in trouble. We're like, nope, can't make it. Gotta
Yeah.
go record a podcast.
Oh, yeah. Katie told me, I said, so of course we're not recording Sunday. And she looked at me and she goes, you know that if you were, I would go over there and tell all those guys you're not. I'm like, no, of course not. We're not recording on Christmas.
Well, you could have carpooled. It would
worry.
have saved you gas money.
Right?
That's true. Yeah.
So before we get to the film du jour, shameless plugs, don't forget we're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find a podcast, you can find us while you're there.
Spreaker.
While you're there, be sure and follow us. You never miss an episode. Maybe leave us a review. That's always helpful. You can also find us on Facebook, facebook.com/real spoilers. While you're there, like the page, join the group. It's called the League of Show Sharers because we're hoping you will share an episode and maybe get us up to 2 downloads per episode. That would be amazing.
Well, I do usually download it to check the quality.
I don't think it counts you twice, though.
No. Oh, no, I was the one, though.
Oh, okay.
So
I was
really-
like, the systems are smarter than that.
Yeah, right.
So people who were kind enough to share an episode last week include Librarian Cynthia, Chris Valls, Julianne Jordan, Gabriel Lugo, Tammy Lynn Powers, Betts, Travis Tewitt, Ralph Tribble, Chris Sanders, Josh Rosen, Brent Smith, Christopher Rex, Heather Sachs, Cinema Recall, Brad Hyen, Zavon Back,
That's a new one.
Chris Williams, Minorities Report, James Install, Dissect That Film, Colby Mack, Invasion of the Remake, Mike and Oscar, In Session Film, Vertigay 314, Binge Movies, Feel and Film, Ryan Terry, Matt Naglia, and Geek to Me Radio. So thank you very much for sharing an episode. Also, don't forget, we have a Patreon where for $5 a month you get all sorts of bonus content, and we like you extra. So
We've had some hiccups this week, so the holiday horror episodes are coming, but
Yeah.
just be patient. They're coming.
It's the holidays. Well, who doesn't like hearing about Christmas movies in January?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, we're just going to do 4 weeks of New Year's Evil. That's all we got.
I just realized the audience won't be able to see this because I'll be editing the video, but Joe's...
Can you see her in the background?
No. But Joe's
Oh.
camera is still on in the studio, and I feel like I'm Clint Eastwood talking to an empty chair. I just looked over and see this empty chair that we're talking to in a spot.
That's hilarious. I thought you said you could see. So for those watching at home, kids are off school. So you might see a random head pop up because my 6-year-old is laying behind me while I'm recording this. So, yes,
So-
that's my child.
You won't have to insert very many chicken noises this week.
No, you will.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you think Joe
Those
cares
no-
about that?
Yeah, this one
More
won't do
chicken
it. The oth-
noises.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. The other one it probably does it more than I do.
I always cussed in front of my kids too. People were like,
Yeah.
"Well, the whole." I'm like, "No, they need to learn which words they can't say." So
Yeah,
this is
right.
How people? It's funny. People are like, "Oh, you can't do that in front of your kids." I'm like, "Do you drink beer in front of your kids? Do your kids
Yeah,
drink
you smoke
beer?"
cigarettes in front of your kids.
There you go. So yeah, there's all that. Let's dig in, shall we?
it's Ryan Johnson has had. I feel like he's had kind of one of the more interesting careers over the last 10 years. Is Last Jedi 10 years old?
I
No,
don't
it's
think
less
that's 10
than-
years old.
No.
I think
it's
it's less than 10.
Yeah.
He found this I wouldn't even say underground, but critical acclaim with it was Brick, right? Like that's kind of the one that
That's
That
the
was his
first.
indie. He's
Yeah.
an indie.
yeah, he was like
darling.
an indie guy, right?
Yeah.
And then we thought that Lucasfilm was kind of gonna moneyball it, was gonna MCU it, and start bringing in like these indie guys to do the Star Wars flicks. And Ryan Johnson was the only one that got the opportunity to do that because Josh Trank and Colin Trevorrow the bed. That's kind of the way that worked.
Yeah, you kind of forget that they were going to have these other guys come in and do this stuff, and then JJ just took it back and he's like, "Nope, forget all that stuff those guys tried to get tricky with."
Well,
which is
I think
kinda...
I think the weird backlash from Last Jedi, and then Colin Trevorrow did something else that like bombed hard.
Well, yeah, he
and
got
they
fired
told-
because he did the Book of Henry.
Oh, that's right. And then Josh
Which
Trank
bombed.
did Fantastic Four. That was his last one, and they were like,
But
"Never
I don't think
mind."
Trank was going to do a spin-off, though. He wasn't going to do a trilogy.
Oh, that's
it
right.
was always
You're right. He was gonna do the
JJ.
Boba Fett one, right?
Yeah, it was JJ, and then it was Johnson, and then Trevorrow. We're
Okay.
gonna do the three, but yeah,
And
that's
there
a
was-
separate. But Lucasfilm got scared, and they didn't.
Yeah.
That was at a time when you didn't know not to listen to the trolls, and they were letting the fans control. Not the fans, the very loud, critical. I mean, we know exactly the type of fan, quote unquote, we're talking about here, and they let them try to control the narrative. And when they got all that backlash, they started firing people and changing things, which ultimately I think was the wrong move, because then the Rise of Skywalker undid everything that Johnson set up, and then turned it into a huge mess because you just set up all this stuff and they completely ignored it, brought back Palpatine. They didn't know what to do, and so it was a mess, and it's too bad because also I don't know that Ryan Johnson's own trilogy that he was going to do is ever going to happen. And I thought that was an exciting prospect, that he was going to have
Wait, he was going to get another trilogy?
yeah, but not a Skywalker saga. You know, he was going to move away and just do some kind of older thing about Jedi, like the younger, maybe how the Jedi were.
Well, does he set that? Is Last Jedi the one where like it ends with like there's
The
like
kids
the
with the
little
mops.
kids sweeping up
Yeah.
or
Yeah,
something?
I mean that.
It's
that-
gonna be like Newsies but Star Wars.
I mean, that was one theory. Obviously, we didn't know what he was going to explore. I don't know if that was just a setup or a spinoff to his own thing, but he was going to do his own trilogy. And now, I think they got cold feet on that with all the other stuff. So it's not canceled yet, but also, like, I don't even think he knows if he's going to be doing it yet. So
Sure.
It's not canceled, but it's not canceled.
I was gonna.
Right.
It feels like they have gone on the MCU path where they've got stuff lined up, and it doesn't sound like the Trevorrow stuff is in there. And I don't even think they don't have any other movies in development.
not
right?
Trevorrow. Trevorrow got
Well, I
fired.
mean Star Wars movies.
Right. Trevorrow got fired. Patty Jenkins got fired.
Oh man, I forgot Patty
Rogue
Jenkins
One.
had something down there in there too.
Yeah, they're being strategic with mapping things out, and they're not trying to throw as much stuff everywhere. And so it's who's the TV guy?
Dave Filoni.
Dave Filoni's they're Kevin Feige, and so I think they're trying
Right.
to get a rein on.
I think
all that stuff.
they're having so much success in TV.
That's exactly it.
And so it's like, why mess with it? Star Wars has huge box office muscle in the United States. Once you start getting international, it doesn't have the nostalgia that other properties do. And so
and that's because it wasn't released.
like they didn't use that business model as much back
Sure.
then, so especially like when you get it to like China, which is a major market, nobody gives a crap about Star Wars in China. So like without that kind of box, so it just doesn't have the international muscle that some other properties do. Ironically, some of the newer properties do. So like I think that, and I mean I said this before they pivoted to TV, that I thought the future of Star Wars was in television. That
Like Nostradamus.
yeah, I'm like that makes the most sense. Like it's
Thomas Nostradamus.
yeah,
There he is.
and it's
Hey,
it's
now,
also lower.
That's a shirt. That's a shirt.
It's also lower stakes, right? Like if you put out a movie and it underperforms, everybody's sitting there reading the tea leaves, seeing the box office numbers, but nobody really releases their streaming numbers. So it's
That's true.
And like I said, just the stakes are lower. It's like, oh, I just turn on TV and there's a new Star Wars thing there, and for a TV thing, it's really well done, and that's good enough. Where I think
I think
as
the
much
TV
as you
stuff
love
is
Baby
almost better than
Yoda,
movies.
if they built a movie around Baby Yoda, people would have lost their minds. They would have
He would have been the new Jar Jar Binks.
It would have been, or an Ewok or whatever. Yeah. But because it was on a TV show, people were like, "Oh, that's kind of cool." And I know there's there's 3 more shows coming in the next year, right?
Yeah,
but when it's like you get one movie every 2 years and it doesn't immediately make you feel like you're 9 years old again, but in a way, I think these people lose sight of the fact that it does make you feel like you're 9 years old based on the temper tantrum that you're having. So
totally fair.
Brian Johnson's good though. So he did Brick, and then he did Looper.
But you left out Brothers Bloom.
I know. I was gonna say Tom's favorite. I know.
I like that movie is so frustrating because it's like the first 10 minutes of that movie are just brilliant, and it's like because it follows the Conman brothers, but it opens with them as children, and I've said this before, it's on YouTube. You can watch it like the opening 10 minutes. You don't need to watch the rest of the movie. If you just watch that first 10 minutes like a short film, it is phenomenal. The mistake he made was bringing in the adults. Like he should have made a whole movie about these 2 kids because the kids, that aspect of kids as con men was just a blast to watch. And when they pivoted to the rest of the movie, it just really kind of went downhill.
Dropped the ball.
But go watch the first 10 minutes of Brothers Bloom.
Looper's pretty fantastic as well.
I thought Looper was great. Love it.
Looper is fantastic.
And then did he get Star Wars off of Looper? Or is there something else in there?
I mean,
in between, he was doing TV.
Okay. And then he comes in and kind of, the end of what was that one called? The Force Awakens. You're left walking out of that thing like, all right, like we're back. Like, we sat through the prequels. We're back to everything's back to normal. And then he hits you with The Last Jedi. And while I think The Last Jedi is a really good Star Wars movie, it completely is a different tone than everything else. And the people turned on it unjustly, I think.
Well, it's that old thing of you think you know what you want. Like Force Awakens is a carbon copy of A New Hope. And so it felt familiar. It was a nice way to walk you back into the universe, set you up with familiar characters, familiar archetypes.
And they needed to do that.
Yeah, and it felt very warm and safe and familiar. And I love The Force Awakens is a fun movie. Is it derivative? Yes, but it is fun. And then The Last Jedi, Rian Johnson tried to do something completely different. Do you want us to just rehash? You want a carbon copy of Empire? You want a carbon copy of Jedi? It's like, no, he gave us something completely different. And I think, and I'm on record as saying, it's the best film of the new trilogy. I think the last one's a mess.
Fair.
The first one's fun, but it just does feel a little familiar and safe. And, he tried to take chances, and JJ, for being in charge, did not map out the trilogy, and that's what you get when you say, hey, do a second one, do whatever you want, and he does whatever he wants. Then that's on you. It's not Johnson's fault. And then he had to rein it back in and undo it. Also, it was a mess, and I don't think he deserves any of this hate that he gets from the people that just can't stand The Last Jedi. So it's a shame, but it's great that it hasn't stopped him. I mean, obviously,
well, that's what I was gonna say, right? Is he's
Knives
coming
Out.
off of that, and then he comes back with Knives Out,
and
which
that's
I think
phenomenon. I mean, worldwide
amazing.
phenomenon. People love Knives Out.
On paper, that movie should have made about $45.
I know, it's a murder. Look at all the Poirot movies, and I mean, I've enjoyed those movies, but they're not worldwide phenomenons. And Knives Out just hit this perfect combination of the humor, the mystery. It had the star power in it, a great cast, and Daniel Craig is great as Blanc, and Tom, I think you've mentioned before that you don't like the movies that you can't follow, that make the puzzles so hard that you're like, oh,
or they're not even really puzzles, right? Like it's
impossible to solve ones.
Yeah, like you see this. Like I felt like the Da Vinci Code was all that. It's like they would show you a puzzle that made no sense, and then he would solve it, and we were supposed to go, he's so smart. But if I can't play along, I don't know that he's smart.
And I think that is a good model to have with these kind of detective stories too, where you're like, okay, everything is kind of there, but we're gonna leave this 5 minutes of information out that we'll give you later, and then everything will make sense. So it's hard to craft, I think, something kind of like Clue or I don't even the Columbo episode, right? Like those are
Yeah.
those are not easy things to do.
Well,
And
Columbo
he-
was always fascinating because Columbo is not a whodunit, it's a howdunit, right?
That's
Like,
true.
Columbo
That's
is
true. We
like
know who done it.
You know who did it, and you know how they did it, but it really comes down to what was their mistake that Columbo's going to seize on, and so you spend the time like you know the answer, but you're trying to figure out how to get to the one piece of evidence that will really like tie it all together, which
good.
was a very
Such a
clever
great-
way to go about that.
But this kind of goes back to Johnson's roots with Brick. That was a
Oh, yeah.
noir,
Yeah, for
this
sure.
indie noir mystery, murder mystery, and it was cool because it's a kid in high school trying to do it. It was really
Yeah.
clever.
Is it Joseph Gordon-Levitt?
Yeah,
Joseph
I mean,
Gordon-Levitt.
he's in all his movies, right?
Yeah. And so it was really, really neat to see that happen. And I think that it was like this perfect stepping stone to get to something like a Knives Out. And now Benoit Blanc is up there with the great detectives,
Yeah.
right? Like I mean, especially in modern audiences, it's like Poirot and Blanc are on the same level, and younger audiences are going to go Blanc as the guy. And it's cool that he created that character, right? So this is an original idea that obviously is similar to those other murder mysteries, but he created this new way to do it with the humor, and it worked on every level. And so of course they get a sequel, and then it's announced Netflix is going to get it, which was kind of a weird thing because the first
is
one
very
made
weird.
$1 billion
Yeah.
or whatever it made. It's like, oh, and this is just going to go to
And then they only
Netflix?
put it out for what, like a weekend?
to
it was
get
only in
the
theaters?
awards or whatever.
So they could be eligible for awards.
To me, the point of running a business is to make money.
Well, Netflix
And
would
if-
like to have a word.
I guess that's true. And if
Remember
your first
16
one
billion
makes,
in debt? They're not.
yeah, but if the first movie in the series makes $1 billion and you only put it in theaters for awards talk, that's a terrible business model.
They're in the streaming business. They're not in the theater business.
guess
They put it
that's
out there to
true.
do
I
it
guess
because
that's
people
fair.
were mad that it wasn't going to be in theaters at all. So they did
Yeah.
it, and they did it even for an extended week rather than just a weekend in New York or whatnot in LA.
Right.
So, but I mean, Netflix is a streamer. They bought it so that people would have to resubscribe to Netflix to watch it or keep their subscription another month. That is their business model. So the week is just a bonus. And yeah, I mean, you could say that about anything. Why does Netflix make any movie and not put it in theaters? Like
That's fair.
that's their
That's
business
fair.
model is streaming. So it was weird though. It was a head scratch. They must have paid a boatload of money, and especially for this cast.
I just don't get the business model anymore because it just seems like yeah, they're leaving so much money on the table by not putting
Yeah.
this thing in theaters for
big time.
real. And it's like, and you would still have the streaming rights to it because it's yours. So why not throw it out there and make a few $100 million and then be like, and 4 months later or 4 weeks later, it's on Netflix exclusively. Like
I
Yeah,
think
it
they.
doesn't- I don't get it.
But they make like $1 billion of income per month from Netflix subscriptions, and so 4 weeks in theaters, splitting revenue with all the theaters and whatever, all those different splits and cuts that you have, and then it's like, well, if they make a whole bunch of subscribers and it equals 250 million going to them, I mean, they must know why they do it, but it's not as easy.
It's just got to be so hard to suss out
Yeah.
what really gets people to subscribe to Netflix.
And
yeah,
who isn't already subscribed?
Yeah.
Well, their subscribers have been slowing down, and they were missing projections and such. So,
Oh, really?
but anyway, so they pay a boatload of money, and we get this sequel, which I mean, I thought this was great.
Like,
This
it's pretty
is-
great.
This is one of my favorite movies of the year. I think it's fun. I think it's one of the best comedies. I think
It-
that it just works on all levels with the mystery, the humor. It's a really fun movie.
The fact that he has figured this out twice, right? And this one doesn't feel like Knives Out. Like,
It
it's
doesn't
got the
feel like a
same-
retread. I think that some of the people who are lukewarm on this movie, it's kind of back to Star Wars, right? But it doesn't feel like what I wanted it to feel like, so it must not be
Right.
good. And it's like, but he's not doing the same thing over and over again. I will say I was lukewarm on this movie for like the first hour. I was just like, it's good, but like, and then like it pulls the rug out from under you, and I realized everything that I thought was a flaw in the film was actually
design.
a positive attribute,
And that's
so,
what
Right.
people are seeing.
Yeah.
It won you over.
Yeah.
And people that are mad at it are like, oh, well, we get this. It's not what you think you're looking at. It's like, but that's the mystery. He's
It's what it's called a twist. Neither was Sixth Sense. Like,
and he's also though but Ryan Johnson, I think, is a very smart smart writer, right? His movies
Yes,
haven't
I would agree
they're,
with that.
they're not just straightforward films. He's done a lot of really clever stuff in his career. And with this movie, you have to, if you go back and you watch it again and you look at all the clues he planted, this movie is the thing that Yo-Yo Ma said is the type of puzzle that they all received, where it turns on itself and becomes something different. That's what this movie is. Like
Yeah.
he sets up all these clues that, of course, on the first watch, I mean, you don't know what the hell they're talking about unless you're some kind of puzzle expert, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, but then if you watch it again, and
Well,
you-
it kind of starts by so they all get these puzzles, right? And it kind of starts by doing the thing I don't like, which it gives them these puzzles, and there's no way for the viewer to play along. Like you can't
Right.
really solve
No.
these. Like the first one, you're like, oh, maybe, and then they start pounding through like five of them, and you're just like, well, these are just nonsensical. Like there is no way for the viewer to really engage with the puzzles being presented for them to open these boxes.
No.
the
Not
only
at
way
all.
I took it they were able to is because he does this kind of stuff every year, and they're
Right.
used to trying to solve these different things, and then you obviously have some very smart people. I mean, some of them are
Some of them are,
right.
I think
It's-
the Dave Batista one is my favorite. Where
With the mom. That's all-
his mom's like yelling at it what the puzzles are. He's like, "Mom, I
she's
got
great
it."
too. I can't think of that actor's
Is it
name.
Jackie Hoffman? Is that who that was?
Is that it?
Who plays his mom?
Yeah.
Yeah, Batista's mom. She's like the neighbor friend in Garden State when they're at the funeral.
Oh my God, you're right.
And,
She is.
uh,
Yeah, Jackie Hoffman.
Yeah, she's so
yeah.
funny. She shows up in a bunch of random
Yeah,
stuff.
you
but
see her stuff all the time. Like her name always sticks in my head is because she was, and I'm pretty sure it's her, was in the Broadway production of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and my wife's cousin was in that.
Okay.
And so we went to New York to
Oh.
watch it. And then when she walked on stage, I'm like, why? I'm like, oh, I've
know
seen her
her.
in a million things.
Yeah,
Like,
she's-
and Only Murders in the Building. And
Yeah, she's-
you see her pop up all the time.
She's great. She's the one that, do you remember when she makes the shirt out of the drapes? Out of
In Garden State?
yeah, Zach Braff's
Yeah,
mom
yeah.
has the like jungle drapes in the bathroom. She's like, I made you a shirt out of the drapes, and then he's wearing them. He's sitting up against the wallpaper and blends. It's just a really memorable moment, and I'm a big fan of that movie. And so that's what I always think of her in. But she's great, and she was very funny in that scene. And like, let's talk about all the characters. So you have the Dave Batista, who's this Twitch streamer that's supposedly the first to get to 1 million streams, and he's a macho, alpha male type, and he's talking about how men are so great and whatever. And then he lives in his
Talking about
mom's
boobs.
basement, and he tries to tell his mom to like shut up, and she smacks him, and
He's like, "What did you say?" He's like, "Nothing."
which I think speaks to which is obviously a lot of this is the social commentary.
I
on-
think that's a big old commentary
on all these
you
different
know.
people are different people from society that
Right.
Johnson has something to say, but
When
this
we find out that Andrew Tate lives in his mom's basement, we'll be like,
Right.
"Oh, that tracks."
but
That
so
makes sense.
right, so you've got like the alpha male that's so macho and whatever, but he lives in his mom's basement and he's getting pushed around by her. He's not even out on his own. And then what's her name? Kate Hudson, who, which is funny. She's got the Fabletics line in real life, and her character in this film has the Sweeties, which are like sweatpants, but you've got like the fashion model who's kind of fallen from grace and also says some very questionable things that.
There's a line from Peg, who is like her assistant in this movie.
Who is
that I
from,
thought
do you know
was-
where she's from?
I do. She's from the MCU, the Netflix MCU stuff.
Well, she's also the girl, the love interest in that Love and, what's the one with Dylan O'Brien that we all loved?
Oh, Love and Monsters.
Love and Monsters. She's the
Oh,
one on the
okay.
other end of the phone that he's trying to get to.
Oh,
Same actor.
yeah. Okay, she was also in the Netflix Marvel stuff.
Yeah.
She's one of them. Either way, she's like.
I just
guess
always like
there's
to
a-
give love to Love and Monsters because that
as
movie
well.
went
we
under
should,
the
'cause that
radar.
movie was pretty great.
Such a delightful little film at the beginning of the pandemic that
Yeah.
we all had a blast with.
As we're going through this movie, we find out that each person that comes to the island has some sort of bad thing that's going to happen to them that the Edward Norton character is kind of the center of. And it turns out that the shop or
Elon
where they were
Norton?
What's that?
Elon Norton? I mean, Edward
Elon Norton. Yeah, right.
How prescient was that?
I know, right?
Writing
that
this,
was pretty spot on.
writing this a
It's-
couple years ago, and then
He knew. Ryan Johnson knew.
what a bizarre. I mean, this movie came out like right around all the Twitter stuff, and it is so weird to have the eccentric billionaire that doesn't really know what he's talking about.
Sometimes it happens. China Syndrome came out like the week before 3 Mile Island, and then
Did it really?
Yeah, and then it ends up being like it's not in response to 3 Mile
Right.
Island. Like it just came out, and then 3 Mile Island happened, and then it took off and became a huge hit. Another example of like who would have thought a movie about a nuclear reactor disaster would have.
Yeah, right,
made money.
right.
You know what I mean? Like, would have been a big giant
Who
hit.
knew?
Yeah.
But she's such a the Kate Hudson character is such a moron.
That's Birdie.
That when she gets an email regarding where her sweatpants are manufactured,
They say it's a sweatshop.
They refer to it as a sweatshop.
She goes,
And then
perfect.
Peg had the look on her face where she's like, "Oh my god."
She
Did
thought that sweatpants.
Did you
it's
think
a-
that the sweatpants were made at a sweatshop? And she was like, "Yeah."
So that's gonna leak.
Oh my god.
And that she knew that it was a sweatshop and she was okay with it, but she's just dumb, right? I mean, she's a decent person, I guess. She's made some questionable statements, but it's not out of malice. It's like she's not
She's just
intelligent.
dumb.
She is. I mean, I'm trying to be
Dumb.
nice, but it's like she is just not intelligent. So she says some of these things. Duke is the Dave Bautista streamer character. Leslie Odom Jr., who you know from Hamilton, Joe, you would know from the original.
I did.
run of
Yep,
Hamilton. He plays Lionel, and he is like the Edward Norton character's right-hand man. Well, that's weird because of Hamilton, I guess. He's his right-hand man. And so he's this scientist researcher who really is doing all the work. And then you have Miles, Norton's character, who's just coming up with crazy ideas, and he has to kind of rein him in or say, like, that's not possible. And you get that great intro in the beginning where you're introduced to what kind of character Miles is when all these people are on this call with him and questioning, like, you have to put a stop to this craziness. And he's like, yeah, but look, who would have thought these ideas would have worked? And he's holding up all these faxes that
What was
Miles
the,
sends him. It's like
like child NFTs,
kids
or
and
something.
NFTs and some dog something, and but then he's got one framed. He's like, who would have ever thought this would have worked? And yeah, it's like the dogs and NFTs or something. Where
Yeah, right,
babies
right.
and NFTs, and so apparently that skyrocketed. Where it's just like these eccentric billionaire insane ideas that somehow take off. But he's trying to rein him in. Catherine Hahn's in this, who everyone loves coming off of the Scarlet Witch stuff.
Agatha Harkness.
Yeah, where it was Agatha all along. So she's like a governor that's running for senator. And is there anyone else in the group?
You've got Whiskey, who is Dave Bautista's like girlfriend. You've got Peg, who is Kate Hudson's
Assistant.
assistant.
And then I guess
You've
the only
got-
other one is Andy, who
You've
you know,
got
quote
Andy, but you've
unquote
also got like
Andy.
the weird hippie guy.
Well, but that's just a joke.
You keep seeing that guy pop up, and I was like, okay, well, that's the guy. Like, that's what we're doing. Like,
That's just
it's the weird hippie
that's-
guy that keeps popping
yeah.
up. Like,
That's just a running gag, though. That's
it
not
is a
really
running gag,
but-
but I thought it was a pretty good red herring.
Yeah, I mean, if you think maybe he's doing something behind the scenes, sure. But
Right.
but then you've got Andy, who's the big question mark, and we don't know at the beginning of this movie what's going on. But there's something, obviously, that where none of them expect her to show up to this island and this getaway. And when you see Miles look at Andy coming off of the ship,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like he's seen a ghost. They purposely, literally, my first thought was he looks like he's seen a ghost. And why, and so why would he think that she's dead? So it's kind of a huge giveaway if you're paying attention.
on the second watch, I'm not going to try to compare it to Get Out because they're two very different movies, but you watch Get Out once, it plays one way. You watch it a second time, it plays a completely different way. I think this is very similar. Now, when you know the twist, and then you watch it again and you see Edward Norton's reaction to Andy being there,
Yeah.
it makes sense.
I think that's one of the biggest giveaways. And again, I know that you could read it as like, oh, I didn't expect you to show up, but the way he did it, and Edward Norton's a very good actor. And the first time I watched it and he looked at her like that, I'm like, that's you've seen a ghost. That's that look he gave. There's a subtle difference between an actor going like, oh, you showed up, and he was speechless. He was just like,
I even
could
think
not believe it.
when you get a look into their history, that look could also mean like, I can't believe you're here because of what I did to you.
Totally. I mean, I get it,
You know?
but I'm just like, the way I read it was like, there's something more to that. And as we
Sure.
find out, I mean, it would make no sense for her to be there. He is just shocked. So it was, that was a great performance. And you're right, you could read it either way. But then you've got Benoit Blanc, and the funny part about this is that he's sitting around waiting for something, right? Because this takes place in May of 2020, so it's right into
So
the
was
pandemic.
this filmed during the pandemic as well?
I think so. I think yeah.
I mean, I think it has to
Okay.
have.
Yeah.
I mean,
I guess
'cause
that's true.
We're just
Things
on the
are
tail
happening.
end,
That's
and
fair.
it was in the can, probably a year ago. But it's funny because he's sitting around, and this was a weird one when he's playing Among Us, which is a murder mystery game where you're
Right.
trying to figure out it's the thing.
Bodies.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, it is. Yeah, exactly. It's bodies,
it's the-
bodies. It's the
yeah, it's
thing.
the
It's
thing.
it's
Yeah.
werewolf. That's
Who's
what
the
it is.
bad guy?
So it's a murder mystery, and it's hilarious that Benoit Blanc's playing it, but then he's playing it with all other people that have something to do with murder mysteries. For Knives Out and Glass Onion took influence from a Sondheim play, and then you've got, of course, Murder, She Wrote, and those
So
two
are we saying that Angela Lansbury's what was her character on Murder She Wrote?
Jessica Fletcher.
Yeah.
Jessica Fletcher is like Murder She Wrote takes place in the Knives Out universe.
Well, this is a real world. Everything's real except for our characters aren't actors, and
I'm just gonna pretend that it does.
yeah. Oh, I think it does. Because they play themselves, right? So that's Sondheim he's talking to. That's
Oh
Angela Lansbury he's
Angela
talking
Lansbury,
to.
we're gonna pretend that it's Jessica Fletcher.
Oh yeah, no,
then-
no, they have
and then
names
Murder,
on the
She
Zoom
Wrote
thing.
is-
It literally is the actors.
Oh, it did? Damn
yeah.
it.
So, but they're the actors that played those roles, right? So that's why
Sure,
Benoit
sure.
Blanc is playing with them, which is funny. And then is it
Natasha
Natasha
Lyonne?
Lyonne? She's doing a series that Ryan is
For Peacock.
Yeah, it's a
Oh.
mystery series that Johnson's producing. So he had her in, and then Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was in a movie that
He was in
Airplane.
I was like Game of Death.
he was in something where he had a small part where there was a mystery going on. So anyway, it's funny, and rest in peace, Angela Lansbury and Stephen
Yeah.
Sondheim
Yeah.
passed away in the last year. So that's a weird thing to have two,
I thought she had passed away, and I was like, man, how long ago did they film this?
right? But I mean, this is
But
just
it's filmed on a Zoom, so all she had to do was turn on her computer.
Yeah.
sure. So, but he's sitting around, he's so bored and he's waiting for something. And then he gets a knock at the door. And again, this is the clever part of it where you think he's received a package just like all of them have. There's a courier that brings them each this puzzle. And we don't see who brings his. So we presume it's just another one. And he looks at it and, of course he's a genius so he can figure it out. So we presume off camera. But, spoilers, if we want to get into what the twist is at the hour mark.
Yeah, I think we should. Right. So we
Yeah.
don't have to loop back around and do it all over again.
keep
Yeah.
hitting around it.
You should watch the movie because we're spoiling a very fun.
Yeah.
I can't imagine
Reveal
that you
and-
would start listening to this show this episode
Yeah.
for a movie like Knives Out.
But if you want to know,
Right.
is it
Yeah.
worth watching and you're just listening to it because you maybe weren't going to watch it, I would say right now, I think it's a very fun, very enjoyable movie, cleverly written, lots of twists and turns, and we're going to completely spoil it. And it's not as fun. If you knew what was
Yeah.
going to happen, the experience would go down a bit.
So Andy is dead, and the real Andy did die. But what I guess she neglected to tell or stopped mentioning is that she had a twin sister.
I
And
think
the
they all
twin
knew,
sister-
but I mean, we didn't
they
know.
kind of. That's true, but I feel like even if the people knew, if the friend the disruptors as they call themselves,
Mm-hmm.
they were so absorbed with their own lives that they forgot that Helen, right?
Helen is
That her
is
name?
the twin
Helen's
sister.
the
Andy
sister.
I almost
is-
Play
assume
with
that that at least Miles must not know, or he'd start to figure out what was going on.
Oh, sure.
you know.
Yeah, I wonder if that's
Because I think Catherine Hahn and Kate Hudson both mentioned that they knew
yeah.
Helen existed.
But they don't know she's dead. That's
you
doing? Oh,
But so that's the kicker, though, is that, see, no one knows she's dead except for Miles. And spoiler, the reason why he knows is he did it. He's the
Right.
bad guy. Miles murdered Andy, his former partner, who he forced out of the business and took all the credit for her work and her ideas. And so we don't obviously know throughout the whole movie, but that's the spoiler. He did it. And so when she shows up on the island, he saw a ghost. But come to find out, at the 1 hour mark, we find that is not Andy. Andy is dead. As we said, Miles killed her. And now the twin sister, Helen, comes over to Benoit Blanc's house. She brought her puzzle. She brought Andy's puzzle. And then they together crafted this plan to get to the bottom of it. And so Benoit Blanc shows up saying he got an invitation. And Miles is like, I didn't send one. And come to find out throughout the whole thing, Miles is not the genius that we all thought he was. So this is Helen that came and so they concoct this plan that Benoit Blanc got this extra invitation, and Miles, he had a puzzle guy, and then he also hires Gillian Flynn to write a murder mystery.
that was a great. Such a. He's like, and that wasn't cheap. So basically, what we're saying is that there was this big murder mystery that was going to take place on this island. And Ed Norton was going to, it was just supposed to be fun. And they were going to announce this new energy source that was going to change the world. But unfortunately, they have the world's greatest detective there. And when they sit down for dinner, Benoit Blanc figures it out.
He
within
solves it
about
before it
about
happens.
5 minutes.
Yeah,
He
that's
does-
great. That's my favorite scene of the whole movie.
It's
It is a great scene.
He does the end scene. He
Yeah.
does the thing
Yes.
that Poirot does at the end, the thing that Blanc does at the end of
Yeah.
Knives Out. He does the solving at before the hour mark, before we find out the reveals. And so Miles is pissed because he hired Gillian Flynn to write this thing, and she's not cheap. But that's the thing. So going back to what I was saying, he hires people to make the murder mystery. He hired a puzzle guy. He's got a puzzle guy to send all these things out. He's supposed to be this tech billionaire genius, but we come to find out Andy had the ideas and he forced her out. So he really is an idiot. He makes up words.
Yeah.
So if you're paying attention, he's saying words that if you're
Yeah,
going
that
like,
was
"Is
driving
that
me
a-"
crazy. I was like, that's not how you use that word.
And he's supposed to be
Yeah.
super smart, right? So people think he's super smart, but no, he's making up words, and we know he's hired all these people. He really is an idiot that just has gotten lucky and has done some things.
Well, I wouldn't even say he's got lucky as much as he stole from people, right? Like
Sure.
that's what it comes down to. Is Andy had this idea for the whatever the equation was that created Alpha, which was this this massive company that Ed Norton is kind of in charge of, and Ed Norton was just kind of like the face of the company, where Andy, he's the front man, he's the guy
Yeah.
in front of the camera, where Andy and I kind of Lionel as well were like the two people putting everything together. And when Ed Norton got in bed with whoever, these other folks about making this hydrogen cube, I guess, like power source, Andy knew how bad it was. And she was like, I'm not signing off on this. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I'll take everything. I'll take the intellectual properties of Alpha, and there's nothing you can do. Well, then he sues her. No. Does she sue him?
Well, either way, they go to court.
They
All
go
the
to
friends
court.
in this group lie and say that it was his idea. When we know they were all there at the bar, the Glass Onion, when she came up with the idea on the napkin, and they all saw it, and then they
Also,
blatantly-
fantastic name for a bar.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. And then as they all, like Kevin said, they all turn on her, on Andy, and
Because Miles basically has them all blackmailed.
yes,
For one way or another, he has the power over each one of them. He did the funding for Sweeties, and then he's the
Right.
only one that can keep her afloat, and she has to take the fall for all the bad stuff happening. And
and then he fund Catherine Hahn's.
yeah, but he's paying for all her political stuff, and
Right.
Lionel works for him. Obviously, he's his boss, and he has the power over all these people, and so they feel obligated. And then Duke, he got in trouble because he was selling rhino boner pills to teens on Twitch or something, and so he's helped him navigate all that. And so he's got his thumb on all these different people, and so they had to lie. They didn't just do it for fun. It's like they know where the money comes from, and so
Right.
they lied, which is horrible, and forced Andy out because of it and all that. And so that is why when she shows up on that island, not just Miles, who knows that Andy can't be there, or how would this be possible, but all the other friends are like, ugh, we just testified against her in court. Like, it's a very
Right,
awkward thing
right.
for all of them, because they lied, and she knows. They all obviously know that they lied, not they just misremembered. So it's definitely an awkward weekend, but it's great because we find out that Helen and Janelle Monáe plays both of these characters. I don't know if we mentioned
Yes,
that.
that's right.
It's Janelle Monáe, who is phenomenal in this film. I think she does
great.
a great job playing both of the characters. But
I also like that while we don't get an exact replica of Knives Out, we get sort of the same things, right? So the gal who is kind of like Benoit Blanc's not right hand man, but like the one that is by his side, or the one that is working with him, is, what's the gal's name in Knives Out?
I don't remember.
we're
the
talking about
character.
Anna de Armas.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Right. So she's working with Benoit. We find out what we find out about her, but
Well,
she
because
is
she's the outsider of the family, so
correct. And I
she's
feel like he kind of does that again here with Helen,
Mhm.
where you kind of get this outsider working with Blanc
yeah.
to set everything in motion.
Sure.
And Norton is kind of like the Chris Evans, where he's not a bad guy, but he is a bad guy. spoilers for Knives Out.
Yeah, I think it. I mean, I think it comes back to murder mysteries. You have certain
Sure.
characters. You're always going to have the red herring type character that you think, oh, it has to be them, and then it's. I mean, you've got those certain type of archetypes of characters in
Archetypes,
these
yeah, yeah,
things, but Johnson does it in a way that feels fresh, and like you guys said earlier, it doesn't feel like a retread of Knives Out, even though they're both murder mysteries and they have the same detective. I love how different this movie felt. It did not feel like Knives Out 2, even if they try to put it in the title. It's not Knives Out 2. This is its own thing that just happens to have his detective, like Poirot and all the Agatha Christie
Sherlock,
books.
all that stuff.
Yeah, this is Benoit Blanc, and I love that they changed it up, and I'm curious to see where he takes it to keep this fresh. Because, and if I think if anyone can do it, it's Johnson. I think he is very clever in his writing, and these two movies have been great. So,
Yeah,
but
no.
the power source thing, Joe, we should say, Miles has this complex where he's rich, he's famous, he's doing all this stuff, but he wants more. He wants to save the world. He wants to power the
course.
world. It's never enough for him, and so he wants to be remembered in the same breath as the Mona Lisa. is what he says, which I thought was
So
a great,
ridiculous.
but it's a great way that
Yeah.
it plays out that he will now.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's a
part.
good line. That's
So-
a really good line.
So he wants to be as famous as Da Vinci. Everyone knows Da Vinci, right? In the Mona Lisa. And so he wants to be that famous, and he wants to create this power source that is, a very...
It's like clean energy, right? Like that was the whole idea. Is It's supposed to be
Yeah.
clean energy, but the problem is they're using hydrogen.
It's
and I
unstable.
like that Catherine Hahn is like, we're gonna turn every house into the Hindenburg.
Yeah.
Like this seems like a terrible idea.
and
But
he's-
I will also say how we have, right? Everybody gets natural gas. It's
Sure.
That's really dangerous and explosive.
very
But I'm
dangerous.
guessing this is more...
Yeah, I mean it's more so, but I'm just saying it's funny what you can get used to. Like nobody thinks twice about having natural gas in their house.
I just saw there was
Right.
a video going around where a house blew up the other day.
Yeah.
It just completely exploded. Huge. Someone caught it on their Ring doorbell across the street. So, I mean, it happens.
And natural gas doesn't have an odor, right? Like
Right.
they
Oh, yeah.
add that odor so you have a chance at winning if it starts to leak, right?
and not dying.
Right. Well, that
Yeah,
I
right,
can
right.
I
That's the
define
win.
that as winning.
That's a win.
But
That's a win. That's a big win.
yeah.
That's a big win.
So but this guy is such an eccentric billionaire that we go into the Glass Onion, they all come for dinner, and then on the wall is what appears to be a replica of the Mona Lisa, and we find out nope, not a replica. During COVID they had to shut down the Louvre, so they weren't getting as much money, and so to finance that he rented the Mona Lisa, which is just a terrible idea. And then of course the Chekhov's button,
Yeah.
oh, I can't look at it with the glass protective pane in front of it, so I installed this
kill switch.
Yeah, I did turn it off, and you're like, okay, noted.
Right. Yeah, good to know. I got that. I'm sure that won't.
That
come
won't
back later.
no that thing that
No, we'll
protects
never
the
see that
priceless
again.
painting. No. So they set that up.
Yeah, so when Blanc kind of ruins the evening or ruins the weekend, I guess, Blanc brings it up to Ed Norton's character. He's like,
Miles.
look, Miles, thank you. You have like 6 people here that you've given them a loaded gun. Like they're ready. They know that you were supposed to die, and now they want to kill you. He's like, oh, they don't want to kill me, blah, blah, blah. And they go back, and everybody says that they're leaving because the weekend is kind of ruined, and they
Well,
don't.
and he says that's like leaving a loaded gun on the middle of the table and turning off the lights,
Right.
which
happens
Which
later.
Miles is so dumb. He just takes that idea like, oh, like I haven't really thought this through. Let me just
like
do
he
that.
did with everything else.
Right, that's
He
exactly-
took the idea from everyone
Which
else.
comes to that really funny time when Blanc really solves the mystery or whatever in the end. He's like, that's just so stupid. He's like, you're an idiot. But yeah. So and Duke carries a gun everywhere. So again, there's Duke's gun, Chekhov's gun. There, literally,
Right.
is Duke everywhere he goes carries a gun. So of course, in a murder mystery, that is going to come into play.
Who knew? So part of this game is that the like Kevin said, the lights were going to go out, and before that happens, though, they're all kind of getting back into it and they're having a good time again. And I thought this was really kind of brilliant. Is you've got the sound like of the glass going up and down on the Mona Lisa, and then you've got Ed Norton kind of making everyone look at Kate Hudson, who's wearing this very like flamboyant and almost rainbow colored dress, and making her twirl. And he's like, look at her. And I was like, okay, we're trying to distract everyone to look at Kate Hudson because something else is going to happen. And sure enough, something else does happen. Dave Bautista takes a drink out of this drink. He drinks the entire thing, and he immediately grabs for his throat and keels over.
And the fun part of this is that, like Tom said, when he's talking about can you play along, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of details, and you might not pick up the first time, but when you watch it the second time, the clues are all there.
It
You
plays
literally
fair.
could,
Like-
you could have solved it if you were Blanc. You know,
I don't think like these mysteries are so tightly or densely scripted and
Right,
and,
there's a lot.
and convoluted that I don't think anyone can really solve them. But
to be fair,
but
it's there.
but when you go back and pick it apart, everything is there in front of you. So like it's
Right.
which I love about them.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes them fun. That it's like all the things are there. I think the people that say like, "Oh, I solved it," like you might have guessed who the murderer was, but statistically speaking, you have like a 1 in 7 chance of doing that.
Right.
But to actually lay out who the murderer was and how and why they did it, you're full of shit. You didn't do that.
Right. You may have guessed,
Yeah,
but you didn't figure it out from the clues that were
Right.
laid out in front of you.
Yes.
Right.
but
Do you like the National Treasure movies?
I liked the first one
Okay.
because I thought the first
the second
one.
one does kind of do that thing that you don't like.
Yeah, the first one I thought you could play along, right? And like their explanations made sense. And the second one, I felt like it got really lazy and they didn't do that at all. I know there's a TV show now. I haven't even started it. I don't care.
It's all right. I watched the first episode.
But I thought the first National Treasure movie was a lot of fun. And so when the second one came out, I was like, "Oh, this will," and then it was like it ended up being exactly what I thought the first one was gonna be. And so I just I didn't even care about the TV show, especially with no Nicolas Cage.
But Duke says earlier, he's like, to make sure, he's like, there's no what's the thing? Is it
Pineapple.
pineapple? Okay,
Pineapple.
because he's
Yeah.
gonna make him a drink.
Duke don't do pineapple.
Yeah,
over
and
that.
so, I mean, he clearly says he doesn't
Yeah.
doesn't do that. And then if you go back and watch it, when Edward Norton makes his drink, he puts pineapple in his drink, and Miles hands Duke. I mean, it is a blink if you miss it, but if
Yeah.
you're watching the second time around, and then I think maybe Blanc goes back and shows you.
They show it
but
to
the
you,
first
but-
time
yeah.
it does happen where Miles, when Duke goes to reach for his glass, Miles hands him Miles' glass.
right,
which
he kind
we
of like
saw-
sneaks it in there while they're all looking at Kate
Right,
Hudson.
because he's not
Kinda
looking;
like-
he's looking
yeah.
at Kate Hudson. So he hands him the glass that says Miles because he made the drink with pineapple, and obviously he chokes and all that stuff. So it's really cool to see that the clues are all there, and you could solve it if you were really paying attention and taking notes.
Right.
And, it would be hard to, but it's great, and it's like what Joe said with the Sixth Sense. You go back and watch the Sixth Sense, it's like, yeah, no one's talking to him. No one's,
Right,
like
right,
you can
no one's
see all-
acknowledging him.
Yeah,
Right.
and you never would notice the first time because it's done in such a smart way.
Yeah.
Where it's so close that you never bat an eye. You just never go like, oh, that's weird. I mean, it seems natural at the moment, and the same thing here where you're like, damn, he did. It's all there.
Well, and
it's all there.
they would start scenes like kind of in the middle, right?
Yeah.
So like it would feel like in Sixth Sense like he had been talking. Your mind
Right.
filled in the blanks because the scene would pick up and you would just assume that he had just finished
Right.
speaking to
Right,
the
right,
mother
right.
or whatever.
They don't show them like going into the restaurant, being seated, and like how the person just looks at her or something.
Right.
Like they're at the restaurant.
Yeah.
So it was very clever. Again, but that's M. Night Shyamalan, who I'm glad is making a resurgence because he's done some great stuff. He's very clever with his writing like that, and Rian Johnson is very clever in the way that they misdirect you without it being too obvious or too much of a cheat to where, again, where you go back and like, oh, come on, like,
Yeah, right,
the
right.
impossible.
There's no way you saw that.
Yeah.
Right. So the power goes out. It was all planned. Like the island was going to go dark. And when the lights come back up, Andy / Helen
Everyone's
is gone.
running around the house, basically.
Whiskey is gone, and the gun is gone.
Well, and as Blanc runs around the house, there's a knife missing who Birdie has taken that we find out.
Right.
And so and Birdie was the killer in the game, in Miles's game that he had made, that Benoit finds because he has this priceless jewel that is a family heirloom that she wants and all this. And so then she takes a knife and you start to think, well, did she really want to kill him to get it back or whatever? And you question all these different things that you see with the weapons missing and all that. And you see you do see quote unquote Andy, who we don't know yet, but it's Helen running away, and you're like, well, if she's innocent, why is she running away? So you think, did Andy get revenge? And she's been weird the whole weekend with her interactions with all of them. So you just really don't know what's going on. But we eventually see as Blanc and he says Helen, like if you're listening carefully,
he did say it.
He says Helen. Yeah.
Right. In that scene, I didn't even pick up on it.
She runs into him and he goes like Helen, and if you're thinking like if you know her name's Andy, then it's like, well, wait a minute, who is Helen? And so that's right before the reveal that we've already talked about. But she gets shot by a mysterious gloved hand in a like two-way window. He shoots her, and before the flashback to her really being Helen and all that, we think she's dead, but come to find out it's Jeremy Renner's hot sauce.
Oh right, but also she had one of her sister's journals like tucked in her pocket. And that stopped the bullet.
That's why she didn't die. But they use Jeremy Renner's hot sauce, and he puts it near his eyes, so he starts crying.
I got to tell you, the scene where she's kind of like got her head back, and the hot sauce, and everybody's still, she has to pretend to be dead, and all of the people are still there, and the hot sauce
in her nose.
It's such a brilliant like tension scene.
It is
where the hot sauce is just trickling up like the curves of her mouth and getting closer and closer to her nostril.
Because you know how much that would hurt. Like,
it would suck so bad.
Just smelling it. So it going in your nose? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then luckily, Benoit gets everybody away and she's able to react to the hot sauce up her nose. I was like, oh, that would have been real bad. So now Benoit has kind of a leg up because people think that she's dead. So she can kind of move around.
So basically what he's doing is trying to buy her time because she's trying to find the proof that her sister, Andy, created the idea for Alpha and all this stuff. And so Benoit goes in and gathers them for the final scene, the solution type whodunit scene. Meanwhile, she is like digging through every room, ransacking the place. But what's her name? The Duke's girlfriend, right? Whiskey sees her, and now that there's been someone killed and all that, and she has motive. Andy, who she thinks is Andy, it has the motive. She thinks that she's trying to do something nefarious or whatever, and really our Helen is like, no, calm down. So she runs back with Blanc, and she's like, I saw her doing it. She's tearing things up and all this, and so so it's
actually fun because the Helen character has an accent, like a Southern Louisiana accent. And she has to put on, they refer to it as the rich bitch, like
from when they were kids,
for her sister. So, and there are moments when she's talking to Whiskey where the accent drops.
I think she's great. Kevin, you mentioned that both characters, but really she plays three characters, right?
That's true.
Because she has to play Andy, she has to play Helen, and then she has to play Helen playing Andy.
Yeah,
right.
So she's really doing three different performances in this role. For the film critics, she's who I voted for best supporting actress.
I voted for her too for best
supporting
actress.
That's awesome.
Because I was like, she had to do three distinct things, and she does them.
Yeah, I think this is the kind of role that gets overlooked, but Janelle Monáe is fantastic in it. Her performance is really, really great and sells what this movie is doing because
if her performance doesn't work, the movie doesn't work.
Right, because it
either tips off the mystery or it just comes across as stupid.
Right, exactly. So it gets overlooked in a movie like this because it's this murder mystery comedy. But you're right, it is not as good as it is. It does not work if she does not play the part right, and she does. It's like I mean, I know this is a totally different type of movie, but it's like it reminds me of John Travolta playing Nicolas Cage in Face Off, where you have to do the character playing the character, and there's an extra level of skill that comes in with how would this other actor play. You're not just doing an impression, an impressionist doing an impression. They do that on SNL sometimes, where a really good impressionist will have to they're playing the character, and then that character does a semi-impression, and it's just interesting how you have to make it a little different. How would this character do?
I think there was one Weekend Update where Andy Samberg was Nicolas Cage, and Nicolas Cage was on the show.
They do stuff like that a lot.
Doing it side by side.
Yeah.
So, which I thought was great is like when she's having like an actual heart to heart with Whiskey, the rich bitch accent drops, and she goes back to talking like Helen, but Whiskey is not saying she's dumb, but she never picks up on it.
Well, Whiskey, her boyfriend just died, and there's some other
the boyfriend that we think she's cheating on.
Right. There's some great red herrings again with Johnson. He's putting a lot of really clever stuff in the script. So we see what looks like Whiskey having some sort of affair, cheating on Duke with Miles, but come to find out she was doing it for him. Like she was
She was trying to get
Duke
what
knew about
what
it.
Duke wanted to do is he wanted to get his stream advertised on Alpha News.
Yeah.
And Miles is like, no, like I can't put that on my news channel when you got busted for selling rhino boner pills. So he sends in Whiskey to kind of talk him into it, and she doesn't. Like she can't do it. Not that she couldn't do what she was doing, but she just could not talk Miles into pulling the trigger.
But we see it looks like Duke has a clenched fist that he's mad that she's cheating on him, but really he has a clenched fist because of what they're saying, and Miles is like, I can't do that, and he's getting frustrated at
he kind of
Miles.
calls him like a dumb, like he calls him dumb basically.
Yeah, so you get all these red herrings sprinkled throughout that you don't know. But so it really comes down to then they're back in the Glass Onion. I mean, right, and Blanc solves the mystery.
He does. So we find out. So the catalyst of all of this is that Andy found the original blueprint on a napkin that was authenticated because on the napkin there's an imprint of the name of the bar, and the napkin that Ed Norton has, there is no imprint. There's no indentation of the name of the bar.
But Andy couldn't find it for the trial, which was the kicker, because if she could have presented it as evidence. Well, it was hidden away in a book, and there's all sorts of Easter eggs. You can go on YouTube. There's tons of videos about it. But the books he puts, everything has a meaning that Johnson plants throughout it. But it's hidden in a book that means something. And there's a scene where Serena Williams is reading a book that in the first movie they said no one ever read that book. And there's a lot of really fun. There's a lot of really fun, clever Easter eggs sprinkled throughout the movie. But
I like that line too, where she's like, "You guys want to work out?" And they're like, "No." It's like,
she's
your
just
money.
He's so rich they just hire Serena Williams to. It's not just like a video playback.
It looks like she's on like a mirror fitness device.
You can call it tonal. It's fine.
But it's a live.
It doesn't have the arms, so it's just the screen, which makes it a mirror.
Yeah, but it's a
tonal's far superior though. If anyone's curious,
it's a live stream of Serena Williams sitting there waiting for him to want to work out. He just pays her to sit there, which is a very funny, ridiculous rich person thing
to do. So Helen ends up like going to Miles's office, and she's looking at Miles's version of the blueprint, and she just happens to look to the side, and there's a little red square, which is inside this
red envelope.
This red envelope is the original blueprint.
And this is the thing. And this is the thing that where we get in the flashback, we see that Andy found, or Helen shows us the email in the flashback to Blanc that the email's like, I found it. I'm going to take this whole thing down. I'm going to give you a chance to make it right, or I'm burning the whole thing down, which is the catalyst for her murder. And when we see in the flashback, all the people show up at her house because they didn't want to email back or leave a paper trail. So they all start showing up to her house, or a few of them start showing up. And we see in that
they all end up showing up at one point.
I can't remember if it's all, but it's at least a
good chunk of them.
It's a good chunk of them. And what we see is Duke showing up on his motorcycle, the car that they've shown us several times that Miles has on this island, even though he can't drive anywhere. He's rich and wants his car with him. That car that's like a
what
one of a
rich thing to do.
Right. It's hilarious. Why is it on the roof? And he's like, can't drive it on the beach.
Can't
like,
drive it
it's
on the island.
Hilarious. But there's a one of a kind. So that's speeding away from the crime scene, and Duke is going too. So Duke is the only one that can put Miles at the crime scene.
Right.
Because Andy's been.
Well, I think Duke and Whiskey, because Whiskey says everybody's under the impression that Miles was in Greece this entire time. Mm-hmm. But Whiskey's like, no, you were at my birthday party 2 weeks ago, or what? It gives an exact date of when the party was. And then Duke backs that up by saying, you almost hit me with your car.
Yeah. I didn't catch the Greece thing, but I mean, Duke was there. Like, he's the only one that can actually pinpoint him at that actual crime scene.
Right.
And so he knows that, well, if she was murdered, because the whole thing too hinges on, now this part is a little bit of a stretch, but apparently, and Andy's body was found, but the coroner didn't release the information because somehow
I thought they said that Benoit blocked it. He said, I can delay the release of the information for like a week.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So somehow it was kept under wraps because he has that much power. Like, because if it got out, the whole thing falls apart.
Right. Their plan is
Right.
They all have to think that
She's still
Helen
alive.
is Andy. Yeah, exactly. So that is the reason why the time in between, no one knows that Andy's dead, because the coroner was a friend of Blanc's.
So that's the we find out that's the catalyst for Dave Bautista, or for your Dave Bautista getting murdered. Is he has this phone and he has just like the stupidest Google alerts set up. I do like the line where he's like, "You just have it set up for movies." He's like, "I like movies."
Yeah.
But the Dave Bautista character gets
Duke.
Duke gets a Google alert that Andy has been found dead. And there's a scene earlier when we think that it is Duke telling Miles, like, "Look, this is what my stream has just done. This changes things." And Miles is like, "Of course it does. Of course it does."
That's a great head fake where you think, yeah, it's because of his stream's
Right.
doing well, and it's
And
like,
we
no,
find out that it's
he's showing
not.
her
It's
that
because
she's dead.
Duke knows that Miles killed
Yeah.
Andy.
Again,
and
very
that's
clever
where
the
the-
way.
That's where the drink switch happens,
Yeah.
and Miles takes him out. And then he realized, Miles is trying to clean up after himself. So we find out that Miles is the one that shot Helen, because he knows that Helen can't be there, right? He knows that Helen isn't Andy, I guess. So he's trying to clear the board
Yeah.
of all of the distractions. Well, Benoit puts it all together. Helen has the original napkin, and Ed Norton has had like this little like butane lighter, and he lights it on fire and burns it. So the original one is now gone. And just when you think that Ed Norton has everything locked up, Benoit kind of says, he's like, "I can't help you. I've gotten you as far as you can go. And the only thing left for you to do is it like you need to find the reason your sister left or something like that, like to the, and
Yeah,
we
I
find
can't
out that
remember.
he has slipped.
It's been a couple weeks since I watched this. So
I think it's
don't
something
know
like
the
you
exact-
need the reason. So basically, like you need the reason your sister left is how you're going to solve this.
Yeah.
And he kind of slips her the little piece of hydrogen thing. And
What's the
she
spark? I
starts-
can't remember what his technology is called. It's just been too long. I can't remember. Whatever his invention is.
hydrogen
Clear.
boom boom.
Clear.
Stuff. I don't know.
Okay.
Oh, clear, with a K.
With a
With a
clip.
K.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
With a
he
K.
slips her the little
God.
piece that Miles threw at him earlier to look at it, and we either didn't see or forgot that Blanc pocketed it. But so
Right.
now he has it, gives it to her, and we
So
know.
here's what I thought was going to happen.
Okay.
So Helen starts walking around to all of these glass sculptures and starts pushing them over. And I was like, oh, all of that glass is the hydrogen stuff. Because he says that, like, he says earlier that he, being Miles, says that it's already in use. Like they're already using it.
Oh, that's funny.
And I was like, oh my God, he's so vain
that he would
that
make
he has
his.
surrounded himself with this unit.
That's interesting. I never thought of that, but yeah, that could be very possible for an eccentric billionaire.
So Helen is pushing everything over.
And everyone starts
And-
joining in, like, yeah, screw you, Miles. Like,
Correct,
you may have
correct.
this power over us, but we're going to cost you a lot of money and mess up your little party.
Right. And then Helen starts a fire. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to get real bad.
Well,
real
and
quick.
meanwhile, every loud noise, the Mona Lisa security glass goes up. So
Right.
it's this really stressful situation. It's this anxiety-inducing moment where it's like
Yeah, big time.
crashing
The
and thing
sound,
going up
it's
and
like
down. And
the sound of it like is also just like,
yeah,
God, stop it.
it's the sound mixers. Hats off to them, because sound mixing is very important in movies and gets overlooked, I think, in most all films. You don't think about it, and when it's really good, it's not a distraction.
Yeah.
It's just there, and it
Right.
If it's a distraction, you're thinking like, "Oh, that doesn't sound right." When it
Right.
works, you don't acknowledge it, and all this anxiety inducing is a really good build up to what ends up happening. And we know that the Mona Lisa somehow is going to get it, and she finds out that she basically, like, he may have burned the napkin, but that's a priceless painting, and if that gets destroyed,
Yep.
I mean, he's done for. He will be the guy.
Well, not
that-
only does that get destroyed, but it gets destroyed by the power source he's about to unveil to the world.
Right.
Yeah.
So he'll forever be associated with the disaster of, because if a tech thing just fails, they cover it up and they got enough money and whatever.
Yeah.
Sure.
But if it destroys the Mona Lisa, a priceless work of art, you can't get over that because people care
Oh,
about
no.
things like that. It doesn't matter if someone just died or, this explosion ruined whatever. It would get swept on the rug. People would forget, but they will never forget. And so she ends up
Yeah, so
throwing
she
the
starts
thing
a
into the
fire.
fire.
She starts a fire and then she throws the little piece into the fire, and at this point I think he's got like an air suppression system, and it's instead of it sucking the the heat and the oxygen out of the room, it sucks the flames up into the ducts and ends up blowing up this entire place. And everybody kind of scatters. We see that Helen has zeroed in on the Mona Lisa, and
Blanca's
Ed
on the
Norton
beach
realizes,
with Greg or whoever, the random guy. They're like,
oh
just
my god,
drinking.
that's so like the hippie guy who's
Yeah.
just kind of like
He's just
bopping
there.
in and out.
and he's just like, whoa, and
He-
Blanc
well, they're
lights
like,
up
this is a
cigar.
non-smoking area
Yeah.
or something.
That
He's
that
like,
joke too. I mean, we didn't say it earlier, but
And
the
please don't,
non-smoking
like-
thing going
Yeah.
off is funny. Yeah.
Ed Norton and Helen both kind of zero in on the Mona Lisa. Helen does kind of she does totally beat Ed Norton Miles to
The
the
kill
button.
switch.
Hits the button, and of course now the Mona Lisa goes up in flames.
And I love that well, now you'll be remembered. You got what you wanted. You'll be remembered in the same breath
Right.
as the Mona Lisa.
So all of our people get outside, and everybody realizes that they're done, right? Like Catherine Hahn is done because she backed, one of her campaign slogans is she was free and clear energy and the Green Deal. Well, now she's backed like this hydrogen chemical plant to go through. Lionel has approved the hydrogen thing to be mass produced. Duke is obviously dead, and the sweatshop thing is going to come out. So Miles kind of said, is like, you didn't see XY, you didn't see this, you didn't see that, we can make this work. And then they all say, I saw Miles burn the paper. And then another one says, I saw Miles driving from Andy's place. So they all basically they turn on him. They turn on Miles, and that's kind of how this one ends. It was funny. I had seen some stuff online about Benoit maybe being gay, and then there's no mention of it until Hugh Grant opens the front door, where like he's wearing like a cooking apron and making something, some sort of food. But we had heard the voice before when Benoit was in the bathtub. He had heard somebody
I was
talking
wondering who
to
is
him.
it. I guess it could be his partner, or it could be his assistant.
Ryan Johnson said
Could
flat
be
out
anything.
that he's queer.
Oh, he did.
Yeah.
Okay, I
Yeah.
didn't realize
Oh, he
that.
did.
I never heard
Yeah,
that.
I thought
Okay.
that he had said something.
Yeah, he's
okay.
like, no, he's definitely.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I didn't know how to take that. I was just like,
Right.
but it's great. Hugh Grant is then his partner, and then Ethan Hawke.
Ethan Hawke.
Yeah.
Like the cameos. This is pretty funny how he got. I mean, those
You
Zoom
think there's going to
ones,
be
and then-
more of that, but Ethan Hawke's on screen for what, 2 minutes?
Just
Yeah.
he's like, well, because the whole thing took place during COVID, and so you're like, well, how do you get around like the masks and all that?
Right.
And so the high tech Miles has
It's
this
just a
technology.
plot device,
Yeah.
so like they don't have to wear
Don't have to wear
masks, or
masks.
you don't have to sit there the whole movie and be like, they should be wearing masks.
Exactly.
This
So
is-
Right,
nope,
right.
His high tech thing, they shoot a little thing to the back of their throat, and it's like, nope, you are cured from
I like
all
the
illness.
Kate Hudson thing where she makes I think Catherine Hahn maybe says something. She's like, no, that's fine. These people, she's having like a massive party in her mansion. And she's like, no, these people are in my pod. It's fine. And I was like, oh man, I remember those.
It
days.
is weird,
Yeah.
yeah, to go back and hear and see all the masks, and then also you can kind of figure out what each character is by how they wear their masks and what
Very
masks
much
they
so.
wear.
The mesh mask from Kate Hudson.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Got a
mesh
pretty good
mask,
laugh in my
and
house.
Catherine Hahn has a mask under her nose, and
Right,
and
right,
then
right.
Duke and Whiskey wear no masks, and so
No mask.
There's this movie has a lot to say, and obviously about
Duke would be a
class,
neck gator. That's
Yeah.
what he would
Oh,
wear.
for sure.
That's what he would
if you
wear.
had to, yeah.
Yeah.
So
But
no, I
wait,
think this is fantastic.
wait, with the celebrity cameos, we left out Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
oh right,
Where was he?
as the chime,
He's
every
the
ding.
he's the dong.
Oh, that's
that you hear.
fantastic. That's
Yeah.
pretty great. That's
Yeah.
pretty great.
So-
Yeah, it's a shame that this didn't go to theaters, but I'm glad that there was
it
another
did.
one.
Where were you on Thanksgiving?
I guess
weekend?
that's true.
It did.
Sorry.
It was
I
there
missed
for
the
36 hours. You
Yeah,
could
sorry.
clear
I
your
missed the
schedule.
3 days it was out in
It
theaters.
was there for 1 week, one full week.
Okay.
But no, this was a lot of fun. I don't think it was quite as good as the first one, but I thought it was real close.
I didn't think the cast was as electric as the first cast.
I think,
But I think it was
some of the
just as
problem
hot.
is it's like it's not very believable that all these people would be friends.
That's fair.
But
That's fair.
where in the first one they were family, so like it's
Right,
you know,
right.
But still, it's overall. I thought this movie was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was. I thought, how do you recapture the fun of the first one? And this one, I think, did as good of a job. Like, it's close, if not as good. It's close. Where
Very
and it
much
was a
so.
hard, tough act to follow. So I'm on board for 3. I hope that comes sooner than later.
Same, but I also get that Ryan Johnson might not want to just keep making Knives Out movies for the
Yeah,
rest of his life too.
sure.
So I get that as well. So
Especially if he's not making $1 billion on them.
yeah, that
Or
could
maybe
change.
he did.
Yeah.
Maybe he did. Maybe depending on what
I'm sure he still got the
money.
money he wanted to get, or he wouldn't
Yes.
have done it.
Yeah,
right?
right,
So
right.
like he's doing okay.
Yeah,
So-
he's doing just fine.
Well, I guess that's it for this one. Let's go around the table and everyone can say where to find them.
This is Joe. You can follow me on the Twitter at Joey Butts, BUTTS21.
This is Kevin. Follow me on Twitter at Kevin R. Brackett.
And this is Tommy. Follow me on Twitter at Roger Kubert or on Facebook at facebook.com/Tom O'Keefe. You can find the show online, facebook.com/Real Spoilers. While you're there, like the page, join the group, and of course, don't forget our Patreon. So that's it for this one. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, everyone murdered Ratchet.
Get ready for a spoiler. Won't say it twice, cause we all